Hey Enneagram friends, I'm Abby, an IEA accredited Enneagram coach and certified somatic experiencing practitioner. Today on the podcast, I share the coaching space with an Enneagram 8 from the other side of the globe in Cape Town, South Africa. In our conversation, we explore how the protective nature and energetic intensity of the Type 8 structure often causes us to react in a more controlling way than we really intended. We sense into the somatic experience of both the charged up intensity of protecting others, as well as the gentle calmness when we settle in and process the emotions that are coming up for us. Her presence in this conversation very beautifully demonstrates how strength and gentleness are both parts of the Type 8 structure. If you lead with Type 8 or have an Enneagram 8 in your life, this episode is for you. I hope you'll listen in with curiosity and compassion as we transition into this coaching episode.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah. So I'm curious as we come into this space. I read through the form of some of the things that you'd listed, but I'd love to just hear in your own words what feels most helpful for us to explore together in our time.
Well, I thought it might be quite good to dive right in with one of my biggies.
Yeah.
And what I find is that I tend to be quite controlling. So I don't really like calling myself a control freak, but I think there are elements of that I do need to explore. And I've actually got an example of an incident that happened this morning with my husband, where I find myself acting in ways that I don't want to be like that, but I don't quite know how to be another way. So my husband's got some new medication, and he's asked me to help him sort it out because we've had some problems with his medication before, and he's done the wrong thing, and he doesn't see so well at the moment. So I think he doesn't read the labels properly, and he takes the wrong things. So this morning, I've got all the medication, and I sort of took out the right pills, and I said, here we go, have your medication. And he kind of grabbed the pill on his way passing, and I said, no, you must stay here and have your pill now. And he was really upset with me because it felt, I think the way that I don't know, the way that I did it just seemed, I think for him a little bit like I didn't trust him, or I was controlling, or and I guess that's an example. That type of thing happens to me often, where I insist that people do things now and here and the way I want them to do the thing. And I get a bit bossy, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like even in this example, part of what is happening is that you are trying to help. And what comes in that helping energy is a very protective energy. And that can feel controlling, right? Part of protecting is that there's marching orders, or there's strong boundaries to shield people, or there's structure to keep people safe, so that they don't fall off the cliff, right? But in that, it sounds like it might have come up in a way that felt more abrupt for him, or maybe there wasn't enough sensitivity around what was going on. As you process that experience, did you talk about it at all with him, or was it kind of just this odd reaction and then you guys went your separate ways?
Yeah, unfortunately, he was in a bit of a rush, which is why he wanted to grab it and run anyway. So we haven't had chance to process it yet at all. But it has left me feeling uncomfortable because it really wasn't my intention to make him feel, I guess policed, or perhaps it was more like a motherly. I was really actually just too controlling, and I do recognize that is how it came across. But I'm sort of, I have had the experience before of when I don't do that, then he doesn't do it right. And then there are consequences to that, then he, doesn't take the right medication, and then he's dizzy, and then, so exactly that whole protective thing. But I think I sometimes carry it too far because, I'm supposed to be his wife, really, not his caregiver.
Right.
So I guess it's, I do recognize that's yeah, I guess it comes up for me with my adult children. When I ask them to do something, and then I sort of just I insist that it has to happen now in the space that I want it to happen, and I find it really difficult to request something and then wait for it to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and part of what happens in the type 8 structure is that there's just so much energy. There's so much forward momentum energy that gets put into passion, which comes off as being really intense or maybe even intimidating if people aren't as familiar with that 8 energy. But for
Yes.
you, in your experience, it causes you to move quickly, and sometimes that is what is creating this feeling of control, because it's this all of a sudden I have this gut reaction. I think about what needs to be done, and then I say it, and there's no real pause between the gut reaction. And sometimes things feel urgent, like, oh, you're in a rush, so take your medication now. Or, something's
Yes.
happening with your children and you can see the car accident about to happen. So you're trying to get them to quickly respond. But part of what creates that urgency for you is actually your type 8 structure. A lot of times there's not as much urgency to what is happening than what it feels like in your somatic experience, because there's just so much forward momentum. And so in those moments, one of the practices that can be really helpful is to intentionally slow yourself down a little bit. So in this interaction, even this morning, did you feel like you were aware of how commanding that presence was before he had a reaction to you? Like, could you feel it kind of getting charged up in your system?
Um, I guess not as much. Not really. It just felt like I was being helpful. Um,
Yeah. No, and that's okay, right? And the reality is that's where it's coming from, right? It's I will fight off this thing so that you don't have to do it, or I will hold you in place so that nothing gets you, right? But it's a protective element, and it's meant to be helpful. It can just, people can feel tossed around in both of those scenarios in a way that was not the intention.
yeah.
So as you in these moments, even if you're not fully aware of it, oftentimes eights will have this sensation of feeling really charged up before they act or say the thing that happens. So for me, I lead with type 8 as well. And so I feel a heat sensation. Like, it feels like I'm literally boiling up, even if I'm not angry. If it's just the sense of, I'm going to say something, or stop, don't do that, or how dare you, right? Sometimes it is anger, but there's a physical sensation that happens for me. It's almost like my energy is getting charged up before I say the thing or do the thing that is often too quick, or it is done out of this feeling that this has to get done right now, or you have to do it this way, otherwise there'll be consequences.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, even as I describe that, are there times that you can remember kind of that a sensation, and what's your language for it?
Definitely. I really identify with that. There is this. It's kind of an urgency. It kind of bubbles up, and it's like you can't not say it. It has to be said, and it has to be said now, because otherwise there will be consequences, and they're not going to be fun. So I think my protective instinct is highly developed. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So it's helpful to kind of have some awareness of what it feels like in your felt sense, because oftentimes these moments, it's like our type 8 structure is getting triggered, and then it reacts for us without us fully being aware of what even happened sometimes, right? It just happens so quickly. But if we can bring some attention to the somatic experience, what it feels like in our body, that can be a alarm system that goes off for us, and we can kind of sense, okay, I can feel the heat rising. I can feel myself getting charged up. Sometimes it might even feel like a rigidity, like you're like powering up for this thing to happen.
That's true for me. It actually feels like I get harder like there's
Mm-hmm.
like this sense of purpose, this hard structure that says we have to go in this direction now. Yes, it's that,
Yes.
right, more than heat, it's kind of more a rigidity, like a steel kind of platform type of thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And what you're describing is it's a natural part of the human design, right? It's our sympathetic nervous system. It's coming online because there's something about our environment that is causing us to want to be protective, to kind of fight what is going on, right? And even in
Yes.
this scenario with your husband, there's a sense of, I care about his well being. I want this to be okay for him. I've seen the consequences of when it's not okay, whether that is how it impacts him, or even it might impact you, right? And so there's this gut reaction response, and it is coming from a very normal, natural place. But sometimes, because it's happening so automatically, it doesn't happen in a way that's very balanced and in a way that's honoring of what you were actually trying to do. And so in these moments, when you notice that you're getting, you're getting rigid, you're powering up, you're having this sensation, taking those moments to pause and to ground yourself, to take a deep breath. Even now as we're talking about it, just taking a moment to breathe in slowly through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth. And even just feeling the calm that comes in something as simple as a breath. Even when we talk about this, I can feel my type structure getting charged up, right? It is
Yeah.
just this calm.
Yeah.
And breathing in the midst of those moments, that's not a distracting thing, right? We breathe all the time. And it's
Yeah.
something that's such a simple, quiet resource that we can offer to just help to regulate how dysregulated we become. Um,
Yes.
Even for me, when I feel this a lot with my kiddos, I have young children, and sometimes I will, even as I breathe, I will imagine this powered up, charged feeling kind of disintegrating down into the floor, almost like my intensity is getting charged down through my legs, right? It just this, and it's this image that helps create this calm for me.
Yes.
And so even as I talk through this, I'm curious how you can kind of feel this in your felt sense.
You can definitely feel it. I can actually feel it softens off my shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not actually a stranger to breathing. I do practice breathing. I mean, I guess I've learned in my work and in the way that I operate as well, that being able to stay calm under pressure it's really, really important. And I guess bringing that calm also to my more personal relationships, more often with more intention,
Mm-hmm.
it can only help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 Mm.
And in that too, it gives us the ability to respond from a much more present, conscious space. And so
Mm.
even this morning, you might have, from a more conscious, grounded space, you may have still had a similar interaction, but it might have been softer. It might have been more of a curiosity of, do you
Mm.
think you could take it right now just so that I know that you're okay? Or can I walk with you as you take it when you get to the car? Or is it okay? Are you, is there something you need around this, right? Offering just this curiosity that feels more
Mm.
gentle rather than this has to happen because our type 8 structure is trying to protect. How does that sound as I kind of share that back?
That sounds really good. I mean, it sounds like, I mean, I know that would have made a big difference to him. The interesting thing that I probably should pop in here as well is that he's also a type 8. So,
Okay.
so the two type 8s reacting again, and it's almost like where he has a reaction, then I feel my reaction getting bigger. So, somewhere somebody has to take ownership of softening it and breathing it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even in that, right, what you're describing is just a part of our like our human makeup, right? These mirror neurons that when we see the reaction from someone, it triggers a reaction in us. But we can do the reverse of that, of calming down our system so that we are more present. And even from the type 8 structure, oftentimes that's what feels like a vulnerable, like it doesn't have to be fully exposed, but of just like gentle and present, still with strength, right? There's still this foundation that will never change, right? That's one of the giftings of your type structure. But more of a capacity to hold the quiet moments. And even for him, for type 8s, when we experience medical concerns, often that comes onto our radar as weakness. And those are really vulnerable spaces for us. And so even, because what it's like to feel that from your type 8 perspective too, that could be part of what's going on for him as he's reacting to you reacting. How does that land as I share that?
And that's a really good catch, actually, because I think I've minimized in my head how he might be feeling about this new medication, and that might make him more defensive than usual because he might be feeling like he wishes he wasn't having to take extra medication. So that does bring a little element of softening for me, I guess, because I feel a bit more compassion, and as much as we've agreed that I'll help him and get it right and, do it for the next few days till we get into a routine. I think the way in which I did it this morning may very well have triggered a lot of his defenses around feeling vulnerable or weak or something like that. And I guess I went right over that. I didn't see that.
Yeah. And the reality is your type 8 structure did that, right? Sometimes we have these moments of our structure getting triggered, it reacts. And then once we realize that it didn't go well, or we've made a mess, or we broke something, sometimes this shame comes online and it feels like, why did I do this again? And everything about that reaction was very human. It just wasn't the most helpful way that it could have happened, because it was your type reacting to protect you, his type reacting to protect him, and it created this collision. But the reality is it's not broken now. You can go back and bring that moment in time back up again. You can talk through it. You can apologize. You can ask good questions around what was happening for him rather than making assumptions, because it can be restored. It's not this moment in time passed and then I'll never get a chance to do over. We can revisit it, especially with an adult, right? We can revisit that and mend it and restore it, and move forward in a way that feels more life-giving.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess I really do identify with that. Sometimes when I have caught myself in my reaction, I do tend to be quite hard on myself. I did it again and I've been trying so hard not to do it. And, sometimes it feels like the harder I try to not do things, almost like the bigger my reaction when I finally do fall off. And then there is that element of shame, where I really do feel like, why can't I be softer and gentler and kinder more often?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think the language that you gave to that is really beautiful, because sometimes there's just this misconception that like 8s are just juggernauts. Like we can just take on anything. We can lead the march. We're, invincible. And sometimes we trick ourselves into thinking that's true also. But then there's these quiet moments when like we feel embarrassed, or we feel insecure, or we feel terrible about how this interaction went, and it gets into this vulnerability range. That's really hard to navigate, because sometimes we don't even have the language for it, let alone the capacity to kind of heal from and move forward in a way. And so we kind of just hold it close and tight. But what's needed is to allow yourself to experience it, feeling shame and that guilt of what happened is a normal human emotion and response. And so just allowing it to be there for a moment, just even now in this moment, as you recall this conversation, just allowing it to be there for a moment of like, it didn't go well. It wasn't the way that I wanted it to be. I didn't like
Yeah.
how it went, but just allowing that to be. Even as I say those words, are there words that you would describe it with, or even an emotion that comes up as I kind of share that back with you, mirror that back?
Well, I guess I do regret, because I was really so hoping that, that I would get this part right and be able to do this with care and with love, and show him that I'm supportive but not too controlling. Um, yeah, and I guess, the very second morning of the whole pull thing, it didn't go well,
Yeah.
and yeah, it does feel, yeah, there's regrets, I do feel regrets, and I guess shame as well, the embarrassments of realizing that, once again I was triggered, and I didn't need to be, it was just, yeah, I guess I caught myself in my reaction
Yeah.
again, my hard shell, my protective bit, wanted to kind of fight against, what I guess in that moment thought of as non-compliance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess what it does to him is it makes him feel like I don't trust him.
Mm.
um and yeah, and I wish I could say that weren't at all true, but sometimes I do feel like I do need to be there, because he doesn't always do it well,
Mm-hmm.
um, without the support.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So even, in this moment, the emotion, right? There's a lot of narrative and cognitive thought process around the emotion, but the emotion is kind of this feeling of regret. Regret often comes from these moments. The bigger feeling is kind of sadness, right? Didn't go the way that it was supposed to. So just allowing
mm,
yourself a moment to feel that, not
mm,
because you're beating yourself up about it, not because you're judging yourself for it, but just it's a human emotion and allowing it to be there for a moment. If you kind of take a
mm.
deep breath and just allow it to be there, I'm curious if there's a felt sensation that you can feel. Sometimes people feel like a heaviness or a tension. Do you feel something in your felt sense?
I guess in my gut, it does. It feels a little weighted,
Yeah.
like a little heavy. Yeah,
Mm,
it's in my gut.
yeah. So just offering
Mm.
yourself the kindness of taking a few breaths, but imagining the breath going down into that heaviness. Even if you put your hands on your belly, and it's almost this life force just being a resource, this compassionate resource. It's not judging you, it's just offering support because there's some sadness there, there's some regret.
It feels a little better now.
Yeah. If anything
Yeah,
shifts or adjusts or anything new arises as you offer some kindness.
yeah, yeah. It feels like it's just softened a little.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It feels gentle.
Mm, yeah. Gentle.
Mm.
We move through so quickly for all of us, but especially type 8s. And
Mm.
sometimes there's these moments that there's a lot of emotion around it. And we add a narrative to it, we logic it, we defend ourselves sometimes. Um, and none of that is bad. But sometimes it distracts us from the fact that we're having a human experience of this emotion coming up for us. And if we don't take some time to settle in, to experience and allow that emotion to kind of metabolize in our system, it builds up and it becomes more defensive and more reactionary. And it kind of gets this even more charged up sensation, and it comes out sideways in a way that's not honoring of who we are and how we wanted to show up in that space. And also, even though eights are tough, we need compassion and gentleness too. And so in this moment, you're sensing this gentleness, and you're sensing this maybe calm, but it's also a way to be compassionate towards yourself and your experience, so that this emotion doesn't become really charged up and propel you forward even more into the next reaction.
I really thank you. That's actually really beautiful, because where you slowed me down so much, and just reminded me that actually being gentle it's also part of me. I am also gentle, because I often forget that in my rush to be so protective and so strong, and all the things that I just do all the time. And you're right. I like ride over myself a lot. I'm always in a rush to get to the next thing, the next place, the next, conquering. And I really feel that it really, it's really soft, and it's a little sad, a little bit nostalgic, but in a way that reminds myself that it's okay for me to also be soft and gentle.
Yeah.
I can also do that. I am also that.
Yeah. I love that. Even in my experience sharing this moment with you, I can feel almost this spaciousness when you offer that. Like this tingling sensation that just feels like that's the truth there.
It does. It feels like warm and fuzzy, but in a really authentic way, like a really like a deep way.
Yeah.
It's really good to remind myself of that.
Yeah. In these moments, sometimes I like to take a, not a mental snapshot, but almost a somatic snapshot of like, what does this feel like? And it's almost this gift to revisit it sometimes, of like, yeah, this is what gentleness feels like in my system. This is what, for me, spaciousness feels like in my system, like these moments of goodness. Just allowing it as a resource to be there, this goodness. As you leave this coaching space, what do you feel like is the next thing that you either want to take away from this or might want to put into play as you leave this moment in time, this shared space together, and move forward out of it?
I'm definitely going to remind myself how this feels, because it feels good. It feels gentle, it feels quiet, and it feels completely different to that hard, rigid feeling that I had before. So I want to explore that. I want to notice that more often in myself, and breathe myself into a softer place before I react to things.
Yeah. I love that. 30 minutes is never enough time. But I so appreciate you joining me in the coaching space. It always feels like kindred spirits to get to be in a coaching space with a fellow eight. But I also just have such a genuine appreciation for your honesty and your authenticity and your curiosity about yourself and your spouse as you came into this space. So thank you for that gift.
Thank you so much. It was really valuable for me. Thank you.
Hey, Enneagram friends. Thanks for listening in to this coaching episode. It's amazing how much we can learn just by hearing someone else process their experience, share what is true for them, and watch that growth and transformation happen as we have these moments that the lights turn on and we see things more clearly and we have some space to move forward in a way that's more honoring of who we are. My hope, though, is that you will join me in the coaching space. There are many ways that you can do that. On my website, there are 30-minute and 60-minute slots that you can just sign up for. If you need some more information about coaching and you want to have a conversation first, you can also schedule a free 15-minute discovery call to check in and explore how coaching might suit and benefit you in this season of life and the things that you are hoping for and the areas that you feel stuck or discouraged when it comes to your Enneagram type. Okay, friends, till next time.